All right, everyone. So welcome to the Note Investor Podcast. We're host Dan Deppen and joined today by a very special guest, Bob Repass. So Bob, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Dan. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. So why don't we start maybe giving us a little bit about, your background. Your background is really unique to me in this industry. I talk to a lot of folks who are sometimes, newer to note investing or been at it for a couple of years, whereas you've been at it for many years and have literally traded billions of dollars in loans. So very honored to have you on here today to talk about some of your background, and then then we can get into Note Expo and some other things that are coming up.
Awesome. Well, sometimes I think unique means I've just been around a long time, so that means I'm old. But I'll give you a little brief overview. Back in 1990, I was a banker living in North Carolina, and I was looking for some career change. And I just so happened to respond to an ad by Metropolitan Mortgage and Securities that was looking to expand to the East Coast. They were a large firm out in Spokane, Washington, that back in the day was probably what you would refer to as an 800-pound gorilla. They were buying all kinds of seller finance notes, but they were focused mostly in the West, and they wanted to branch out to the East. So I got that position, went out to Spokane for some training. And you have to remember, Dan, this was in 1990, so that was way before the internet and Google searches and things. So I spent 2 weeks out there, and for 9 of the 10 days, I sat there learning how to use this HP 12C calculator.
Yeah.
And the last day was about marketing. They handed me a bunch of phone books, yellow pages, and said, go find some people that have notes. Look for the thrifty nickel and the little green sheets, and just start dialing for dollars. So there's a lot of cold calling, a lot of meeting.
Put everything in a Google sheet instead of the calculator.
Yeah, exactly. I still use the calculator at times. I still keep it here. So, but yeah, today's a lot more sophisticated. So I was with Metropolitan, and I met a lot of people, obviously a lot of phone calls, and started drumming up business. And I stayed with them until 1997 when they wanted to consolidate everything back to Spokane. And I really didn't want to move to Spokane. So just so happened that I had met some folks from the associates at various trade shows over the years. And they had an opening here in Dallas, and I relocated my family here to run the operations for the associates. And we were buying, I don't know, 5-10 million a month in seller financing at that time, from brokers all over the country, mostly seller finance. Some of it is what we refer to now as the professional sellers. It'd be somebody like home investors that would go out and rehab a house, take back a mortgage, and look to sell it. So we bought a lot of that kind of paper. And then in 2000, Citigroup bought the associates, and I could kind of tell that they weren't quite sure what buying loans at a discount and having yields of 18%, and they weren't comfortable with that business line. So it happened at the time where Bayview Financial out of Miami was looking to get into the seller finance space to buy some discounted mortgages, because at the time they were buying a lot of scratch and dent and a lot of Fannie Freddie paper, but obviously they were paying par or even premiums for that. Mm-hmm. And for the securitization model, they wanted to get some discount paper. And it just so happened they wanted me to move to Miami, but my oldest child, my son, was getting ready to enter high school, and I didn't want to move to Miami. And they let me start the whole operation here in Dallas. So we went from 6 people to, at the height of my time at Bayview, I think we had about 120 people. And we bought billions of dollars worth of seller finance and scratch and dent paper out of our operation here in Dallas. We also ran a servicing shop here, so we would collect what we bought. And then in 2008, when the markets turned and basically our liquidity for securitization got, tied up, we basically entered the asset management world. So I ran the servicing shop until 2012. As you probably know, and a lot of your listeners know, the world changed then, and all of a sudden everything was compliance and audit and HAMP mods, and it was just the government was involved in everything, and it wasn't the deal making that I like to do. So I left in 2012, and I joined Colonial Funding Group and Eddie Speed here, and we started our own capital fund. And right now we have 2 capital funds. We have one with 20 million under management, which is a variety of performing and non-performing, and we have another one that's about 10 million under management, which is mostly, that's probably 90% performing loans. So I run our capital funds. Obviously, Eddie's with Note School, and he runs our training business there. He owns all the companies here, and I'm the managing director. I manage our P&Ls. But my main focus is on the acquisitions and managing of the capital funds, as well as hosting the industry event we started 6 years ago, Note Expo, which I know you've been at for at least the last
couple times, yeah.
So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, very cool. No, that's very interesting background. I mean, not many people have been in the business that long and seen that many different cycles and phases and ebbs and flows. I mean, one thing I get questions about a lot is, what happens to notes in a recession? And everybody's worried about a recession coming and asking, where are things headed over the next year or two? I mean, I'm kind of interested in your thoughts on, if there is another recession, will it be like '08 again? Or, what typically happens to note investors in a down cycle, or how can they prepare for that?
Well, I think it'll be a little bit different. Let me go back a little bit on the history side, because as I just ran through my resume, so to speak, I was working at institutional investors, Metropolitan Mortgage, the Associates, Bayview, had a lower cost of capital. It was a large institutional firm, which there's not that many firms like that now. The market, the note business now is a lot more private capital that's involved, which I think will also help towards that. But if you go back to when the seller financing and the note business really took hold, was in the 80s. And that was because the interest rates were so high, people had to provide seller financing at rates below the 18 to 20% prime rate so that they could sell their property. So a lot of people think seller financing is when, the rates are so low and you're making loans to people who can't qualify at 8, 9, or 10. Well, it started to people who couldn't qualify because the rates were so low, but they had great credit and everything. They just couldn't afford a 20% mortgage. So I've been through all those cycles. And back in the 80s, before I got in it, when I was in the banking world, it was the RTC days. They were liquidating savings and loans. It was very similar to what happened in '07 and '08. The banks, and they were looking to liquidate their product. On one hand, it's very easy to see that history repeats itself. I mean, I try to keep my finger on the pulse on what's going on. I'm reading the Wall Street Journal, the trade publications, and they don't call them subprime mortgages anymore, but there's all kinds of low or no down payment products coming out again. And then, people wonder, are we going to have the same problem? Of course, we're going to have a similar problem. If you lower your underwriting standards and you make, credit accessible to people that probably shouldn't have credit, then you're going to have those problems. I don't think we're going to see a recession on the magnitude as we did in '07, '08, because I do think the banks have protected themselves, to whereas the non-banks are making a lot of these what they call non-QM mortgages now. And I don't think we've seen the last of non-performing loans. I know for the last few years it's been a little tighter to get some non-performing loans. There's a lot more re-performing loans out there.
Yeah.
But as far as the real estate and the housing forecast, I mean, it's always interesting to try to figure out what's going to happen, especially with an election year coming up. Both sides are nobody wants to see a recession because it hurts the incumbent party, whether it's Congress, Senate, president, whatever. They want to try to make the economy a strong point. So in my mind, they'll kind of push whatever buttons they can to keep the market where it is. After the election, then, all bets are off, and we'll see what happens in early 2021.
Right. So very good. And then, so we started to talk about Note Expo there. So I know there's some years you have a theme, or could you give us like a heads up on kind of what to expect this year at Note Expo?
Yep, absolutely. So this will be the 6th Note Expo. And we started this, Eddie and I had a conversation back in 2014. And obviously, I've known Eddie since the early 1990s, and we actually met at various trade shows back in the day. And in the 90s, there was a couple of trade shows across the industry where people like the Associates and Metropolitan, we would go and meet other people and competitors and counterparties, and then it kind of just all kind of went away and turned more into you go to a trade show, be a pitch fest, and people be selling this, selling that, and we started attending events like IMN and MBA conferences, which was more educational and vendor specific, and we wanted to recreate something like that for the note business, where there's no pitching from the stage, it's not selling anything, it's like 30 vendors in a trade hall and people up there doing various sessions on, whatever topics happen to be hot at that particular time. So this year, I'm excited that one of our general sessions and breakout sessions is going to address cybersecurity.
Okay.
How you can prevent cyber attacks, how you can make sure your systems that you have in place that not only have all your loan data, maybe all your servicing information, but also your workflow processes, any of that, how you can protect your systems. Because, you hear about Russian hackers, but you don't really think it's true. But I'm here to tell you that it does happen to people. You do get ransomware things, and all of a sudden you can be out of business pretty quick. So I've had a couple of conversations with some of the speakers that we're going to have on about it, and they've got some really interesting, not only data, but just stories about entrepreneurs that were not prepared, and unfortunately, their business couldn't last, that kind of stuff. So cybersecurity is one of the themes. Creative financing and ways to finance your note business is also a theme that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about the new ways of sourcing inventory. A lot of people now, you used to either, go to maybe to some asset managers, or maybe you were just going to some smaller capital funds trying to look for product. There's some new and exciting platforms out there that you can kind of find some assets on. And so we'll have various folks on there talking about sourcing inventory. So right now, I think we got 28 sponsors that'll be there. We've got probably about 7 more that are in the decision-making process. So we should have over 30 without any problem. The typical, your self-directed IRA companies, your loan servicers, your property preservation, everything you need along the line of the note business will be there. And it's always good when you have a chance to network all in one place. So, Dan, you can attest to this when you've been there. You may know 10 people. Well, it's a lot easier to get all 10 together in one spot and meet them over 2 days and, have lunch or dinner or a cocktail or coffee and just sit there and catch up rather than to try to, do that individually. So
no, that's definitely true. Yeah, when I was in the phase a couple of years ago of kind of learning about notes and deciding whether or not I really wanted to get into this, I thought, well, I've been following different people online. I'd had some phone conversations with people, but I'm like, if I'm going to dive into this industry, I really want to meet some of these characters face to face and see what they're all about. And that first year at Note Expo was great for doing that. Met up with a lot of people, and then of course there was a lot of good content. And then the next few times around, I'd already had a lot of contacts and actually spent most of the conference just talking with people almost continuously, and caused me to miss out on a lot of the content because there were so many people I was trying to catch up with. But it really is great to have just about everyone in the industry all in one spot. There's really no other event like that, and I think some of the other note events they've been out there kind of smaller, and some have kind of been drifting away a little bit, but Note Expo's kind of been like the flagship event to be at.
Yeah, and that was our goal. And I think there's 2 things, and I want to piggyback off of what you just said. When you're connecting and reconnecting with people that you haven't seen, since the last Note Expo, or, maybe you haven't seen them in a while, it's not only people that are also in the business that you can bounce ideas off, or maybe you can do possible deals with, but you actually get to meet face-to-face with a lot of the service providers that you're dealing with. Mm-hmm. When you're trying to select, say, a loan servicer, and all you can do is go to their website and read their service agreement and their fee schedule or whatever, you don't really get a good feel for, what are they going to do for you if one of your loans goes sideways, and how responsive are they going to be? But when you can visit their booth and you can sit down and talk to them, and you got 6 of them there to vet, so to speak, I think it adds value to that. Same thing if you're looking to open up or move around a self-directed IRA, or if you're looking at a platform for workflow management. So there's a lot of different people that not only other note investors that you can have a little brain trust with and say, hey, what are you doing? How are you marketing this? What happens this? But also the chance to meet some of the industry experts on a one-on-one basis, like you were talking about. Put a name to a face. It's always the best way to go.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Some of the topics this year sound interesting. I'm sure I'm going to miss the stuff on. So this year, we talked earlier before we started, but unfortunately, I'm going to miss it this year because I have a cousin getting married, and for family political reasons, I'm not able to go. Otherwise, I would definitely be there. But yeah, I think cybersecurity is a big one, and it's one that people don't think about. I came from the IT world working for Oracle for a long time, and I know a few months ago I bought some new software products because install a lot of stuff on my laptop because I spend a lot of time in coffee shops, and unsecured Wi-Fi, and when you're logging into your bank and logging into your loan servicers and doing a lot of sensitive stuff, the probability of something going wrong is probably low on an individual basis, but the consequence is massive. And like I know when I was at Oracle, we had all kinds of data on things where, and case studies where companies had gone out of business. In some cases, very large, companies worth tens of millions of dollars where they had something really crazy happen that actually put them down, or they lost data. That's what I used to work in, was data archiving and things like that. So protecting your data, protecting your information is pretty huge.
Yeah, I mean, for the note investor and the entrepreneur, I mean, that's your livelihood. And, you have all your records on there. And like you said, the beauty of the note business is you can work remotely pretty much from anywhere. My wife and I like to travel a lot, and unfortunately, it's hard to unplug. People can track me down pretty much anywhere I am, which is pros and cons, right? It's hard to get away, but it's you don't come back to a stack so high you can't get out from under. But it is important, and I'm excited that we're going to cover that topic. I think some of your listeners would obviously benefit from hearing that. And, unfortunately, you won't be able to be there, but I'm sure you'll be there again next year, and we'll see you then.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I've had more than one email and phone call from people saying, hey, I'm going to be at Note Expo. Are you going to be there? Can we catch up? So it's, not doing my business any favors by not being there.
Right.
This year, that's for sure. Then you also touched on, talking about places to buy notes. I know when people contact me and they're new, like the biggest question I ever get is, where do I go to buy notes? That's obviously a hugely helpful one as well. I know we'll get a lot of interest.
And there's a couple online platforms. We have a platform, notesdirect.com. Paperstack.com is an awesome platform. So there's some platforms like that. And then obviously there's a lot of connections like you were talking about earlier where you just meet with people and, you do a quote unquote joint venture with them and you work on a deal and you source product that way. So I kind of look at, since I'm running a capital fund, I'm looking to buy large pools. When I say large, everything's relative, right? I'm looking to buy somewhere between 20 and 200 assets at a time. So we're not huge where we're out buying 1,000, loan pools at one time, but we're in that, our typical trade's probably somewhere in the 85 to 100 assets at a time. We'll buy the smaller ones, but just from a due diligence and operational manpower, if a pool gets anywhere over 200, we just can't get it done in a timely manner because we still try to look at each loan individually and so forth. So, and I've been fortunate to get, I've known people for almost 30 years. So I get just people sending me stuff all the time. Not a lot of it may fit my model, but we look at a way to try to monetize whatever lead comes in. And, if there's people out there looking for deals and they're not on a platform, then I'm sure folks that have capital funds like we do have product that comes across that maybe we don't buy, that we can find a way to have a relationship to get that product in front of people. So we're going to talk about some ideas to not only, do the Amazon online shopping, but, also how you can uncover some of the, we'll call them off-market type products that are out there that you just have to really work the room to make those connections. And, you can be on somebody's list and they can blast your spreadsheets every, 8 o'clock every morning or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. There's some good deals. You just got to pick through the ones sometimes. So we're going to talk about various ways. So we're going to have some folks from the platforms on there. We're going to have some of the guys out bird dogging deals talking about that. So that's going to be a panel discussion that we're going to talk about. One thing that we did last year that went over real well was we did a series of what we referred to as Note Talks, which was a TED Talk type presentation. So we had 8 guys up there, and a TED Talk is like a 10 to 12 minute presentation. So it was anywhere from telling their stories to a motivational, inspiring entrepreneur, or to a hot product type talk that they did. So we did 8 of those last year. They were well received. We're going to do them again this year. We're going to split it up. Last year we did them all on Saturday morning. This year we're going to do half of them on Friday and half of them on Saturday, and just kind of blend in the normal general sessions, panel discussions, and breakout sessions. So I'm in the process of building out that agenda. I'm looking forward to having everybody come in, and it's a lot of logistical things trying to get everybody there, and
it's an impressive set. It's an impressive operation. I mean, it's a big stage. It's a lot of people there. It's a lot of presentations back to back to back to back, and very kind of well-oiled machine. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that goes into that on the front end.
There is, and there's a lot of behind-the-scenes people working it. One thing we always try to make available, like you had mentioned earlier, was an atmosphere where people can connect. So in our exhibit hall, we have all the breakouts and all the lunches and cocktail hours all in there with the vendors. So everybody kind of congregates in that exhibit area during the lunch times and the breaks. So that's always a fun time, just to watch hundreds of people mingling and getting to know everybody and work their way around there. I know we'll probably talk about it before we wrap up, but it's NoteExpo.com that you can go to and find out everything about it. It's November 1st and 2nd. It's here in Dallas at the Renaissance Hotel in North Dallas. 2 days. It starts on Friday at 8:30 and ends on Saturday at 4 o'clock. So it's a great time. And if there's anybody who has any questions, just go to NoteExpo.com. And there's one other thing, and I'll answer any other questions you got, but one other thing I wanted to share with your audience that I'm passionate about, that a lot of folks, if they've been around me or whatever, know it's the Seller Finance Coalition, and trying to overcome some of the regulations and some of the regulatory relief that our industry has been facing since Dodd-Frank went into effect, and the number of transactions a person can seller finance. So I've been working on Capitol Hill for the past 4 years, trying to get some bills introduced that would at least alleviate some of that on the number of transactions you can do while still keeping in place consumer protection. So I'm going back up there in a few weeks to meet with the Financial Services Committee, and I'm feeling pretty good about having something come out. We've kind of had a regroup this year. We had obviously a change in the majority of who's in control of Congress, so there's new committee chair people, so we had to kind of not start from scratch, because a lot of the committee members are the same, but we had to get something reintroduced. But Seller Finance Coalition is fighting for the industry, and I'm excited about that. And we usually do a little regulatory update at the Note Expo too, just to kind of let everybody know what's going on. And sometimes it's the first people have heard of it, and sometimes people want to know because they get affected by it on a regular basis. So.
Yeah, and that's something that, a lot of people probably aren't familiar with, but they probably don't realize what a big benefit what you guys are doing is to them. Because if you can get some of those Dodd-Frank rules changed, it really makes life for note investors a heck of a lot easier.
Absolutely. I mean, and people are like, well, I don't do seller finance, or I don't. Well, if you have a non-performing loan and you take it through REO and you foreclose on it, and then you want to owner finance that REO, that's your seller finance transaction, right? Yep. And according to Dodd-Frank, you're only supposed to be able to do 3 in a 12-month period, or else you have to have RMLOs do everything. And RMLOs play a key part, don't get me wrong. We do way more than the minimum, so we always make sure ours are compliant. You want to make sure you do that. But for the small mom and pop investor, who may do 10 deals a year, having to incur that cost to be either licensed or to get an RMLO, it just they'd rather put their private capital somewhere else. So anyway, that's the story that we tell when we go to Capitol Hill, how it impacts their districts back home and their ability to have homeowners and access to capital, and that seems to resonate.
Yeah, definitely. So, and then I'm actually doing one of those seller finances right now. I mean, fortunately, I'm under the limit of 3. I don't do a lot of that, and I try to. It's not always within my business model, but yeah, it would definitely be nice when that cap is lifted, because as my business grows, that's definitely going to be an impact here.
Yep, absolutely. Well, great.
And then one last question. So are you going to have the Bruce Springsteen music back in between the sessions? So I know Ed is a big Bruce Springsteen fan, so I just kind of enjoyed that in the middle. It kind of gave it a good vibe to the event.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits of being the host and MC. I get to pick the playlist most of the time, so it's funny. A lot of people have now realized that I am a big Bruce fan, and that the conversations usually end up coming around to that at one point or the other. So yes, we definitely are. As a matter of fact, on Sirius XM on the Bruce channel this month, since it's Springsteen's birthday, they were doing a vote for the top 20 songs, and I was getting emails back and forth with Joel Markovitz and some other people in the note business asking if I've voted already and what songs I was voting for and things like that. So it's just something that I've always enjoyed, and I guess that's kind of my trademark. You'll hear Glory Days and Born to Run and some of those good songs in between speakers and during breaks.
Yeah, definitely. So that'll be a great event. So again, that was NoteExpo.com for more information, and Bob, I think it's a good stopping point. So thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Like to have you on again at some point in the future.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm sorry I'm not going to see you at Note Expo. For those of you that are listening to this podcast, if you see me, please let me know that you heard about it from Dan and his podcast, because I always like to know how people find out about Note Expo. And again, November 1st and 2nd here in Dallas. I hope to see you.
All right. We'll see you then. All right. Well, thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks, Dan.